real. All right. Now, I was optimistic the entire time, but man, this is getting bad. All right. So, reading the title, y'all already see, man, WNBA offered no proposal at critical CBA meeting. I mean, the owners are like, yo, we gave our last proposal. It is what it is. Take it or leave it. Now, I won't read the whole thing. I will summarize it because I read through it already. And I just wanted to pick out some of the points so we can quickly talk.
So the WNBA players and owners finally sat down in a room at league headquarters in New York City for a massive 3-hour meeting on Monday. And after all that time, after literal weeks of waiting around, and after the union had already submitted their counterproposal 6 weeks ago, the league walked into that high-stakes meeting with absolutely nothing. I'm talking no new offer, no counterproposal, just a vague promise that they'd start working on an official response soon.
Oh man, oh my goodness. Now, Kelsey Plum did say she just wanted to get in front of the owners, have a heart-to-heart, have a conversation with them, and I guess that's what this meeting really was, man. It was nothing new. It was just going over how they felt about the first meeting or that last meeting that they had, right? Now, it's crazy because Kelsey Plum and Fee did not make it to this meeting in person. They were on Zoom.
Nneka Ogwumike, the union president, summed it up perfectly when she spoke about it later. She said that kind of set the tone for the entire conversation because they were desperately hoping to hear something different. And let's be honest, saying this is getting messy is an understatement at this point.
Continue. It says it was the first time players met in person with the league and members of ownership since the fall, and roughly 6 weeks since the union's last proposal was sent. 6 weeks. Man, this is crazy. The WNBA did not counter the players' proposal at Monday's meeting. Instead, it was communicated to the union on Monday that the league would begin working on an official response to their proposal. Now, Nneka ended up stating that they told them this at the other meeting.
And I mean, this is genuinely concerning for anyone who cares about the league, because we have to start asking if we're actually going to see WNBA basketball in 2026. The uncertainty is real. Here's what makes this meeting even more problematic when you look at the optics. Two of the most prominent voices in these entire negotiations, Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart, weren't even physically in the room. They joined the meeting via Zoom, and according to the reporting, they were actually supposed to be there in person, but they apparently had flight issues. Flight issues of all things.
Caught my attention, fam. She said earlier in the day it was reported by ESPN that strong debate was occurring among members of the WNBPA's 7-team executive committee. According to this report, one group believes now is the time to stand firm in the pursuit of a revamped revenue model. The other group, meanwhile, is less inclined to pursue a strike. Hey, man, here it is. Here it is, man. You have half saying, let's get it done. You have half saying, hey, hold out just a tad bit longer. I knew this was coming, man. I knew this was.
Think about that. 2 days before one of the most critical meetings in WNBA history, and two of the highest-ranking union members can't figure out how to get to New York City. Nneka was there. Alicia Clark showed up, Breanna Turner made it, but the two players who have been the most vocal about needing this face-to-face conversation with ownership are calling in from a laptop screen. Now, let's talk about what actually happened in this meeting, because the specific details really matter here. On the players' side, you had 4 people physically present: Nneka Ogwumike, Alicia Clark, Breanna Turner, and Stephanie Dolson.
Union, right? I mean, you have players who don't necessarily have these endorsements that they could just live off of while they're fighting for this new CBA, right? So I can only imagine that some players are like, yo, look, this is more money than I've ever seen on a contract. We need to go ahead and do it. But then you have some of them saying, you know, look, if they're willing to give us this, just imagine how much we're worth. So I understand that too, but man. I just hope they know what they're.
Then on Zoom, you had Kelsey Plum, Breanna Stewart, Elizabeth Williams, and about 40 other players listening in. So there is clearly massive interest from the rank and file membership. They want to know what's happening with their futures, and they're paying attention. But look at the ownership side, and this is where it gets stark. Only 4 people showed up in person. Just 4 representatives: the Connecticut Sun owner, the Storm owner, the Liberty owner, and one more.
meeting here because it was a waste of time. Y'all coming into this meeting without a new proposal. But at the end of the day, I mean, Kelsey Plum did state that she just wanted to get in front of the owners and have a heart-to-heart. Honestly, maybe this was needed because the league or the owners were not answering you guys at all. They were ignoring you all. But now it seems like they're working on an official proposal. So maybe this meeting was needed. Maybe the owners heard them out a tad bit more. I don't know. We're going to see if a new proposal or counter proposal shows up.
Matt Ishbia from the Mercury joined via Zoom. But that's it? That is the entire representation from the league that is supposedly negotiating in good faith to save the season. I knew this was going to be complicated, but earlier that same day, ESPN dropped a bombshell report that should concern everyone who wants to see WNBA basketball this year. According to their sources, there is a strong debate happening right now inside the WNBPA's 17-member executive committee. The committee is essentially splitting into two different camps.
Hoops, man. We just want hoops, I promise you. So as they stated, we're still at the status quo right now. Hopefully something gets done. I mean, Caitlin Clark ended up reassuring people who were watching the CBS or, I'm sorry, not CBS, NBC, that something would get done. They will get it done within a few weeks. So hopefully that happens so we can see some hoops, man. Y'all let me know how y'all feel about everything that.
One group believes this is the absolute moment to stand firm, to push hard for the revenue-sharing model they've been demanding for so long. The other group is seemingly less inclined to pursue a strike. They're looking at the league's current offer, which is objectively the biggest financial proposal in WNBA history, and they're wondering if holding out is really worth the risk. Nneka, Ogwumike, and Alysha Clark both stepped up immediately to deny any division within the ranks. They insisted that the union is united and that everyone is on the exact same page. They claim there's no internal conflict whatsoever. But here's the thing about these kinds of denials. SPN doesn't just make this stuff up out of thin air. They have sources deep inside that executive committee. Someone is talking, and when you've got a major outlet reporting division and the union's immediate knee-jerk response is to deny it, that usually means the division is real, but they're desperately trying to keep it from becoming a bigger narrative. I just hope they know what they're doing, because think about the position these players are in right now. You've got superstars like Breanna Stewart, Kelsey Plum, and Nneka Ogwumike, who have massive endorsement deals, lucrative overseas contracts, and financial security outside of their WNBA salaries. They can afford to hold out. They can afford to miss an entire season if it comes to that because they've built other substantial revenue streams. But what about the majority of the roster? What about the players who are making $75,000, who don't have multi-million-dollar shoe deals, and who aren't getting those huge international contracts? For them, this league offer represents more money than they have ever seen on a professional contract in their lives. And now they're being asked to potentially walk away from it because the stars want a better revenue-sharing model. That is exactly where the tension comes from. It's not about being united or divided on principle, really. It's about the material reality that different players face vastly different financial pressures depending on their status in the league. So what exactly did the owners communicate in this 3-hour meeting? According to the reporting, they volunteered at the very beginning that they didn't even have a proposal prepared. They didn't wait for the players to ask. They just put that on the table immediately. They just opened with, "We don't have anything new for you today." Instead, they said they would begin working on an official response to the union's last proposal. Begin working. 6 weeks after receiving that proposal, they are just now beginning to work on a response. Nneka said that set the tone for the conversation, and you can understand why the players wanted this meeting. Kelsey Plum specifically said she wanted to get in front of the owners, have a heart-to-heart, and have a real conversation about the future of the league. And the owners show up essentially saying, "Yeah, we'll get back to you eventually." That is a tough pill to swallow. Here's what's really happening here, and this is where it gets into the psychology of high-stakes negotiation. The owners are playing a deliberate waiting game. They've put what they consider their best offer on the table. We're talking significant salary increases, charter flights, better working conditions, and improvements across the board. And now they're sitting back, letting the time pressure build on the players. Because every day that passes without a deal is another day closer to the season start. Every week that goes by is another week where players start panicking about whether they'll actually have paychecks this year. The owners know that time is on their side, in this scenario. They know that the longer this drags out, the more that internal division in the union is going to grow. They know that players without financial security are going to start pressuring the leadership to take the deal. So why would they come to this meeting with a new proposal? Why would they negotiate against themselves when the current offer is already working in their favor? That's exactly what Alysha Clark and Nneka are calling disrespectful. That's what they mean when they say there was a lack of urgency. The owners aren't treating this like a crisis because, for them, it simply isn't one. They're comfortable. They have the resources to wait. Now, Caitlin Clark made some comments recently that gave people a glimmer of hope that this would get resolved quickly. During an NBC broadcast, she reassured everyone that a deal would get done within the next few weeks. She sounded confident. She sounded like someone who had been in the conversations and knew which way things were trending. And maybe she's right. Maybe the owners are working on that official response right now, and maybe it'll be enough to close the gap. But here's what concerns me about putting too much stock in what Caitlin says right now. She's not at these meetings. She's not in the negotiating room. She's getting her information secondhand, just like the rest of us are. What she might be hearing is optimism from veteran players who are trying to keep everyone calm. What she might be hearing is reassurance from union leadership that doesn't want the rookies panicking. But that doesn't necessarily mean a deal is actually close. Let's zoom out and look at what's really at stake here. Because this isn't just about salaries and revenue sharing anymore. This is about the fundamental business model of the WNBA and whether it can sustain the kind of growth the players are demanding. The league's current offer represents a massive financial commitment. They're proposing salary increases that would more than double what most players currently make. They're committing to charter flights, which is an enormous operational expense for the league. They're improving facilities, increasing per diem, and enhancing benefits across the board. And the players are saying that's not enough. They're saying, we want a percentage of revenue, we want to be partners in this business, not just employees. Which sounds great in theory, but here's the practical problem the owners are pointing to. The WNBA still isn't consistently profitable. Most teams actually lose money. The league has been subsidized by the NBA for its entire existence, so when players demand revenue sharing, the owners are looking at the actual financial statements and saying, what revenue are we sharing? The revenue that doesn't exist yet? The projected future revenue that depends on continued growth? This is the fundamental disconnect. The players see the new media deals, the increased attendance, and the cultural momentum, and they believe the money is there. The owners see the actual balance sheets, the operating costs, and the long-term financial projections, and they're saying, we're already stretching to make this offer work. Both sides have legitimate points here. The players deserve to benefit from the growth they're creating. The owners can't commit to financial models that could potentially bankrupt franchises, and that's why this negotiation is so difficult. It's not just about splitting up a pie, it's about whether the pie is even big enough to split the way the players want. The 3-hour meeting on Monday didn't resolve any of that. It didn't move the needle on the core issues. It was, by most accounts, just a chance for players to express their frustration directly to ownership. And maybe that was necessary. Maybe the owners needed to hear face-to-face how seriously the players are taking this. Maybe that lack of urgency Nneka mentioned will actually light a fire under the league to come back with something substantive. But here's what worries me about the whole situation. The owners didn't show up with 40 representatives. They didn't bring a big delegation to show force or commitment. They sent 4 people, 5, if you count Ishbia on Zoom. That's not the behavior of a side that feels pressure. That's not the posture of a group that thinks they need to scramble to make a deal happen. That's the body language of people who believe their offer is fair, and they're willing to wait for the players to come around. Alysha Clark said after the meeting that a strike is still on the table if that's what it takes. She made it clear the players haven't backed down from that threat. But threats only work if the other side believes you'll follow through, and I'm not sure the owners believe it anymore, because they've seen the 48-hour deadline come and go without action. They've seen the union extend negotiations instead of walking away. They've seen the cracks starting to show in the players' unity with reports of internal debate and division. The owners are betting that when push comes to shove, the players won't actually strike. They're betting that the financial pressure will be too much, that the players without endorsement deals will force the union's hand, and that the desire to play basketball will override the desire for a perfect contract. And maybe they're right. Maybe that bet pays off for them. But if they're wrong, if the players actually do walk away, the WNBA is facing a crisis, unlike anything it's dealt with before. You're talking about missing an entire season at the exact moment when the league has the most momentum it's ever had. You're talking about losing Caitlin Clark's second year, Angel Reese's development, and all the storylines that were supposed to carry the league to new heights. You're talking about betraying the new fans who just started paying attention, who just bought League Pass, and who just started showing up to games. That's what makes the owner's strategy so risky. They might be right that they can wait out the players, but if they're wrong, the cost of being wrong is catastrophic. And sitting in a meeting for 3 hours without bringing a new proposal suggests they're willing to take that risk. So where does this leave us right now? We're still at the status quo. No deal, no clear timeline for when a deal might happen, and no indication that either side is ready to make the kind of compromise that would bridge the gap. The season is supposed to start in a few months, and we don't know if there will be a season to start. Kelsey Plum wanted a heart-to-heart with the owners. She got her 3 hours, but heart-to-hearts only matter if both sides leave the room with a better understanding of each other's position. And based on the reactions from Nneka and Alysha Clark, it doesn't sound like that happened. It sounds like the players left frustrated, feeling disrespected, and feeling like the owners aren't taking this seriously enough. Maybe that frustration will galvanize the union. Maybe it'll strengthen their resolve to hold out for what they want, or maybe it'll accelerate the internal pressure to take the deal that's on the table before it gets worse. We'll find out soon enough, because time is running out. And at some point, someone has to blink. The question is whether it'll be the players who need paychecks or the owners who need a product to sell. If you were a WNBA player right now, would you take the league's current offer, or would you risk everything to hold out for revenue sharing? Because that's the choice they're facing. And whatever they decide is going to determine whether we see basketball this year. Let me know what you do in the comments.